Hello everyone, thanks for tuning in today's video. I'm going to have a look at when it's week to 10 days in today's video. It's going to take us into the second half of August. I think we're going up to around the 18th of the month with this update. So it's turned quite a bit cooler for today, and we're going to keep it fairly cool for the next day or two. But as we get through to the end of the week and the weekend, we're going to build in the Azores High. And I think this is going to set us up for a bit of a heat burst as we go through into the early part of next week. We could well start to pull up southerly winds, which I think will lift temperatures into below 30 Celsius, so getting it to around 90 Fahrenheit around Tuesday, Wednesday next week perhaps. And that's probably not going to last more than 2 or 3 days, but it will be quite intense potentially while we've got it. And then inevitably, I think the middle and second half of next week, we'll see that heat breaking down into thunder. We'll have a thundery breakdown. I'll show you all the detail in a second. Before I get on with that though, just to say about the ads. There's links to articles on all the pages. If you have a browse widgets and click through the links, you'll be helping us to pay for our website, if there's any links that you're interested in, of course. There's also video ads. Most pages say own that content when you watch them and close back up again, and it is all helping to pay for gaslobbies.com, so thanks so much for getting involved, and thanks for doing that. We're going to start off with the 500 millibar height anomaly, so next week to 10 days. Red and orange with these extrapolates to high pressure, and blue extrapolates to low pressure. So this is going to take us up to around the 18th of August. We've got the ECWF here on the top, and the GFS, which we'll look at in a moment, is on the bottom. So the ECWF is placing a ridge over and to the east of us with a trough in the Atlantic. And it means that the jet stream does something a bit like that. We start to pull up some very warm air from the south, start to pull up proper southerly influences there, and that will drag up heat out of Spain and the Mediterranean, pump it northwards through France and into the UK. Now, this trough in the Atlantic will eventually provide the energy for a thundery breakdown as it undercuts the ridge. So it's a classic example again of a Spanish plume bringing up hot air, and then an instability comes in from the Atlantic and the Bay of Biscay and breaks it down to thunder and turns it cooler and fresher. The GFS is very similar. That was the ECM, of course. It's GFS, and again we've got that ridge a little bit more towards the northeast, and the trough is actually closer to us even by day 10. So already this is starting to break down with the jet stream going a bit like that. So this up to day 10 is already starting to bring in a thundery breakdown from the south and the west. It's the same sort of idea, which builds in, it pulls up the heat from the south, and then the Atlantic pushes back, introducing a thundery breakdown. So the GFS temperature and precipitation ensembles next 2 weeks, showing all of this up very nicely. The red line here is a 30-year temperature average, so we're going to be cooler than average for the next 2 or 3 days, fairly significantly so, and that's going to be most notable at night. We'll have some quite chilly nights coming up through the early part of this week. Into weekend, the trend with the temperatures is to lift them up, and we get through into the start of next week, and it turns really very warm, if not hot, indeed. However, you see that's only lasting for a few days, and then the temperatures start to drop down again, returning back towards the red line, returning back to the 30-year temperature average. So quite clearly, it's a case of the ridge builds in here, which is where it warms up. The ridge moves to the east just here, which is where those hot southerly winds are pulled in. And then a thundery low moves up from the south and west and cools things down, which is what's going on just here. And you can see this very nicely on precipitation spikes. So loads of dry weather coming up over the next week or so. I've got some rain just here. That's associated with a warm front going to be pushing through the country on Wednesday into Thursday, introducing the start of this warmer push of air. That's when the temperatures are beginning to lift up a bit. So there will be a little bit of rain around midweek, but a lot of dry weather over next week, 10 days. And then as that cool down starts to take place through the latter stages of next week, that is when we start to bring precipitation spikes back, indicating the risk probably of thunderstorms. Temperature anomalies for the next week. This goes from the 8th through to 16th of August, looking generally quite cool, actually, just close to average, maybe a little bit cooler than average. These will warm, I think, over the next few days. So we'll probably look at these charts again on Thursday, when I suspect we'll be seeing quite deep red colours over much of the UK and Western Europe. Precipitation anomalies for next week, the 8th to 16th of August, looking generally drier than average. Here's the GFS for Friday then, and the Azores high is starting to build to the south, but we're still in a more or less flat westerly flow, so it will be warm and quite humid on Friday, but not hot, and there'll be rain up in the north of the country. That continues into the weekend as well. Very gradually over the weekend, this high pressure gets more influential. So by Sunday, 14th of August, the ridge is starting to build up through the country. But it's not really till we get to the early part of next week that the proper heat starts to come in, as that ridge slips into the low countries of Germany. Notice the isobars are backing into the south, starting to move the air up out of Spain and France during the early part of next week. By Tuesday, 16th of August, we're in a proper southerly. The high pressure is through Scandinavia, going down into Germany. Low pressure in the Atlantic. Between the two, we've got a squeeze of the isobars, bringing the air up from the south. That's hot air moving out of Spain, through France and into the UK. I'll have a look at the upper air temperatures in a moment. However, by Wednesday, 17th of August, already low pressure started to move back in off the Atlantic, trying to introduce cooler air, and no doubt producing heavy rain and thunderstorms as the transition takes place. By Thursday, the 18th of August, day 10, we're back in an Atlantic flow. The heat is moving away to our east, so it's turned cooler and fresher by the second half of next week. Here's the upper air temperatures. So Saturday looking quite warm across many parts of the country. That warmth increases on Sunday, but it's not a hot weekend. It's just temperatures in sort of the mid-20s Celsius down in the south. Very pleasant and similar to what we've had this past weekend. So early next week, that heat starts to gather. So you see the intensity of the colours is increasing here on Monday, the 15th of August, starting to bring up hotter air out of France. And then we go through into Tuesday, which looks a very hot day. 15 Celsius isotherm is there across many parts of the country. 20 Celsius isotherm, again, getting very close to the English Channel. And then on Wednesday, this is when the GFS wants to break things down. So the heat is still there in the east, but it's beginning to turn cooler in the west. The transition probably producing thunder. And then we go through to day 10, Thursday 18th of August, and cooler, fresher air then is moving back in across the country from the Atlantic. The surface temperature look like this. So Friday we're up to mid-20s Celsius in the south, still quite cool in the north. That continues into the weekend as well. So Sunday has temperatures 25-26 degrees across parts of southern southeastern. You could usually increase that by a couple of degrees. So by Sunday afternoon, could be up to around 27 degrees in London. That's 81 in Fahrenheit. Then early next week, the heat gathers further. So Monday, 15th of August, is being forecast by the GFS model to reach 27 degrees across much of central southern England. I reckon you would increase that probably to around 29, maybe 30. So getting towards the mid-80s Fahrenheit a week today. And then it's even hotter on Tuesday. Now, this is a very hot day being signalled by the GFS model. It's taking temperatures up to 31, 32, 33 degrees. That's around 90 Fahrenheit. If you add on the couple of degrees that you can normally add on with these charts, that probably takes things up to around 34, possibly 35 degrees. So getting to mid-90s Fahrenheit there, not out of the question across some parts of eastern England on Tuesday, a really hot day if that comes off. Wednesday, as that thundery breakdown's coming through, it turns very much cooler, especially to the north and the west. Still warm in the east, still hot maybe, temperatures around 27, 28 degrees, but certainly cooler, fresher air is spreading back in off the Atlantic. And then if we just go a bit further ahead of that, so we'll go another 12 hours ahead, which is 252 hours, and you see that we go down to the low to mid 20 Celsius by the end of next week. So classic example of 3 hot days and a thunderstorm ECWF, very similar. There's the ridge building up from the southwest on Friday. Still unsettling in the north, maybe a little bit more so than the GFS actually, so Saturday looks quite cool and wet for Scotland. However, it does eventually get there. By Sunday into Monday, that high pressure is taking over, bringing very much warmer conditions across the country to the start of next week. Tuesday sees high pressure going over to the east, and with low pressure to the west, we pull the air up from the south. Hot air begins to move out of France into the UK. And it stays hot into Wednesday the 17th. And even into Thursday the 18th, it still looks pretty hot. There's a thundery low developing just there. That looks a classic thundery low moving out of France. But even on Thursday the 18th, we're still in a hot scenario there. The upper air temperature showing that quite nicely with 20 Celsius isotherm covering the southeast parts of the country. So that's longer with the hot weather. That's about 5 days of hot weather from the ECWF, whereas the GFS is around 3 days. And then finally with GEM, again we've got the ridge building into the south of the Azores on Friday. It pushes northwards. It takes a long time to do it, but through the weekend it pushes northwards. It's going to be more influential by the start of next week. We're all more or less under a ridge of high pressure with warm air being pulled up from the south. And then we pick up this hot southerly on Tuesday, and that continues into Wednesday as well. This looks very hot, this one. Got high pressure over Scandinavia with low pressure out to the west, and a real southerly sucking hot air up from the Mediterranean across France into the UK. There's the upper air temperatures for Wednesday, looking really hot across many parts of the country. Temperatures into below 30 Celsius, maybe in the mid 30 Celsius possible with that. By Thursday the 18th, that's when the thundery breakdown takes place. So the models are different a little bit on the exact detail with this. But the overall idea is the same across all models, which is the high pressure to build up from the Azores over the weekend, giving us a warm and pleasant weekend. It's early next week that the heat starts to kick in as that high pressure moves out of the UK and into Central Europe. It pulls the air up from the south. Monday, Tuesday turns increasingly hot, with temperatures possibly into the 90s Fahrenheit in the south and east by Tuesday afternoon. And then it's either Wednesday or Thursday, depending on which model you look at, Wednesday or Thursday, or maybe a combination of both of them, when we get a thundery breakdown and it turns cooler and fresher behind that thundery stuff. Obviously, the detail in terms of any thunder potential will need to be firmed up on much, much closer to the time. So, all very, very interesting. We haven't had many heat waves this summer. We have one at the start of July, or maybe it's in the middle of July. But looks like we've got another one coming up early next week. So, obviously, we'll be keeping you posted at Gazzo Events. Right, that's all for now. Thanks for watching.